Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Good morning.
Okay, Dana, is that about who we got here?
Hold on. I'm admitting a few more people.
Okay.
And I believe everybody should have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that I don't have to manually do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to test it out. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
true.
I can unmute. I can mute.
Okay.
Great. Cool. Okay, maybe we can just give it like another minute.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting, I'll just give everybody a quick update on the rest of the project. Well, today's CAC is primarily about just having you all discuss with us your impressions of the walk audit and what your experience was. And so that's going to be the primary subject of today's meeting. In other news around the rest of the project, we've been working with Caltrans on getting our final approval for the project. We're still working out our permit drawings for the demonstration, and just addressing any remaining Caltrans comments about the materials, how we are installing the project, or using volunteer labor and help. So we are doing another submittal this week for that, and we're moving right along on schedule. Our target right now for the installation is the end of July, although that might change. We're still waiting to hear back from Caltrans to know whether they think that's a reasonable expectation that they would finish their review in 2 months. So, stay tuned for more on that. I think we'll know more in the next 2 weeks. I think we'll be able to set an actual date for the demonstration and start planning for our, ordering materials and doing all of our procurement. So, Dana, are we ready to go here?
Yeah, it doesn't look like we have anyone else in the waiting room, so I guess we will get started.
Great. So we got a bunch of surveys from folks, and I think that the way that we wanted to go about this conversation was to go block by block. We're going to give you the overall score that we received from folks, the average score basically that everybody gave to each of the blocks, and then just go over some bullet points for each block about what were common elements from everybody's comments. And then we're going to open it up for you all to tell us for each of those blocks what your impressions were, and if you had anything to add to the things that we said.
Yeah, so I'll give a little bit of a reminder, because we actually have a couple of people who are new to this meeting that weren't at the previous meeting, and so I apologize if you did not receive the worksheets or the walking analysis if I didn't have your contact information prior to this meeting. So we disseminated worksheets to facilitate you guys or anyone else who's interested going out and voluntarily conducting kind of a walking analysis of the 5 blocks along the project corridor. And so, it asked questions like, how safe do you feel walking along this corridor? What could be improved? And different types of questions related to, pedestrian amenities. And so it's just a spark basically for us to see kind of what everyone's experience was walking along the corridor, and then for us to discuss it as it relates to the demonstration project. So that's what Tony is referring to. And so can we use the raise hand feature, or if you have your video on, just raise your hand. We got surveys sent to us prior to the meeting, but did anybody else do the analysis that has not sent it to me yet? No. Okay. Got it.
I was just trying to unmute myself. I did the analysis and I haven't sent it.
Okay, cool. So Eileen, okay, so we will make sure to hit you as we go through. So yeah, like Tony said, I did kind of a quick compiling of the scores. And so let me read off the questions that were asked on this part of the worksheet again. So there were kind of two worksheets. The first one basically just, asked you to note what type of land uses were along that part of the corridor, along that block. How was the street configured, whether there were bike lane present, whether there's parking. So these are just kind of basic things. The checklist was more to kind of get you aware of your surroundings and just kind of for you to notate what you see, so then it could inform the rest of the analysis. And then the second worksheet was basically scoring the comfortability of that block for pedestrian travel. So the first question was, I felt visible, safe, and comfortable while walking along this street. And you would score from 1 to 4, 4 being that you agree, and 1 being that you disagree, and 2 and 3 are just kind of if you feel lukewarm about it. Second question, motorists, including bus drivers, behaved well. So this would include behavior like consistently yielding to you at intersections as you were walking. Did they drive at a safe speed? Did it appear that they were looking before turning or backing out of driveways? Question 3, sidewalks are well maintained and wide enough to walk comfortably alongside another person. So a little bit more about the infrastructure there. Number 4, intersection design elements like ramps, signals, crosswalks, and curb extensions are present and make me feel safe while crossing the street. Question 5, the public realm is consistently interesting for people walking, with a continuous street wall and amenities that invite walking, sitting, and socializing. And number 6, the street is friendly to people walking of all ages and abilities.
So I brought up those sheets that Janice.
Sorry, I was
just
reading
described. That's okay. That's okay.
Okay, so there's the sheet. There they are. All right, so from the surveys that we received, the blocks that scored the highest were Church to Kayama. So that's starting on the northernmost part of the corridor. And so basically, a high score again indicates that the people who filled out the survey felt that it was kind of the most comfortable for pedestrians based on those 6 questions that you see there on the right. And then the blocks that scored the lowest, it was a tie for Carrillo to Valerio and Pyrie to Church. So Pyrie to Church is kind of that, block right there in front of the school. And then Carrillo to Valerio is when you're getting a little bit closer down to where we have a little bit more commercial and dense businesses and driveways and things toward Ojai Avenue.
Can you say again which one scored the highest? I missed it.
Church to Kayama.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
/ El Roblar. Yeah, so that's the longest block, and that's the one that goes right adjacent to the Meadows Preserve. So I guess it's no surprise that maybe that one's the most enjoyable if people were kind of considering that it was, you're walking along a meadow and it's pleasant.
But interestingly, Dana, in reviewing the scores, Cody scored that section low.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear his point of view. And my intuition says that part of it has to do with the fact that there was nothing there. Besides the preserve, it's kind of empty. There's not a whole lot of visual interest, but also there's not a lot of street trees, which might be why the other sections scored higher.
Right. Cody, did you want to comment on that?
I think that must have been a mistake on my bad. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. Got it.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
It's the only street that's 2 lanes. You know that, right?
The only
Yes, it was a mistake. I went off memory.
Every other block is sorry. Cody, you want to finish?
I'm sorry to cut you off. I went off memory, and I think it was just an accident I made. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to mark that box on the survey.
No worries.
Got it.
But yeah, to Sousa's point, because of those left turn pockets, I guess, is that what you're referring to, Sousa? It's a little bit narrower.
The whole block is just 2 lanes. Every other block is a 4-lane highway, and this block is just a normal street like the rest of Ojai with 2 lanes. Church
That-
Fuyama.
That's absolutely not accurate. It's definitely 4 lanes along there.
Yeah.
Church to Kuyama?
Yes. It's wide open,
Okay,
easy driving.
maybe I walked the wrong street. I went directly from Church to Kuyama. Maybe, okay, I made a mistake. You're right, Eileen. I was wondering, I made a very stupid mistake. You're completely correct. I didn't walk the highway. Yeah. There's another church to Kuyama that goes along the highway. I went church to Kuyama because that's a shortcut that parents take, and that's the same route I always take. I made a mistake.
If I may, there's 2 ways to get from the corner of Church and Maricopa to Kuyama. One is the highway and one is Church itself.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I see. So you walked along Church. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Beautiful. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, so one other thing that was interesting, so I wanted to ask Dennis, so going back down to the Ojai to Carrillo, you had made a comment on your sheet that said best stretch of all. And I think it was specifically in response to the question where there might have been a little bit more to look at for a pedestrian, but I was wondering if it was more about kind of the public realm. But in terms, so other than kind of there being more opportunities for the public realm and maybe more services to access and stuff on that block, what else in terms of pedestrian comfortability do you think about that block? Because Ojai to Carrillo is obviously vastly different than Church to Kuyama for a couple of reasons. Oh, you're muted, Dennis.
I'm looking at somebody's email right now on the screen. Is that what the rest of you have?
Yeah, Tony, your email is up.
I apologize.
Okay.
Okay, Dennis, go ahead.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Okay. My comment was just, in part, as you said, there was just something more to look at. Plus, there was that nice green stretch on each side of the
Right.
road, right down by Ojai Avenue. I mean, there's that little pocket park. I guess it's called Weinberger Memorial Garden on the, would that be the east side? And then on the west side, the Vaughn's shopping area has a grassy stretch as well with some trees, and that's where near the bus shelter there. So, I mean, it was, it is somewhat dangerous because of the entrance to the parking lot right there between Attitude Adjustment and Vaughn's. I myself don't even ever go out that way. I go out on Carrillo, but in general, as a pedestrian walking the area, it was, pleasant. So I also did like the section as you described, and that's probably why it got such a high rating, up by the preserve. That's very nice. So.
Yeah, well, so in terms of, so like I said, the block toward Ojai is obviously much different in terms of land use than the last block leading up to Kuyama. Both, I think Kathy and Souza had made comments about speed on several of the blocks. These comments don't necessarily correlate with which blocks were ranked the highest, but I wanted to see if you guys had any thoughts on, in terms of car travel speeds, did anyone notice any differences between any of the blocks? Like, did people open up more leading up to Kuyama just because there was maybe less going on, on the side of the road? Or like, how was the safety perceived across the blocks? Maybe Kathy, do you have any thoughts on that? You're muted. Sorry.
Unmute. Hi. So, yeah, I walked the full length, and of course I rode my bike, and of course I've, driven my car too. But the perception that I had, or just the feeling, was when I was walking, the cars were going. I didn't have a speed, I was clocking their speed, so I don't know if they were going the speed limit. But it was this sensation of when I got to like the crosswalks, I felt like I was stepping back, and even though I pressed the cross, the button to get the flashing lights go and the rapid flashing beacon, I made sure that I looked and kind of waited for less cars to come. I just had this sensation of not feeling 100% safe and confident, even with the flashing beacon. And I kind of had that through all areas, but I did also that stretch from Church to Kuyama, where there's just kind of a wide open stretch and not as many curb cuts or driveways for someone to go. And of course, the high school's closed right now. There was a sense that people were going faster. I can't validate that because I wasn't clocking the speeds.
Okay.
Is it fair that once that development gets built with, is it for 100 units, 100 dwelling units, was it? What is it that's supposed to go into that big field? I thought I heard it was 100 dwelling units, so.
The land use is for low density residential, but I don't know, do we have Greg on the line? Yeah, we have Greg. I don't know
Greg,
what the development plan is.
Yes, can you hear me?
Are there active development proposals for that parcel?
Yeah,
No.
there's Greg.
Yeah, there's been, the owner of the property has brought up initial concepts, but none of those have been supported, and that basically the owner of the property's backed off. So there's nothing that's been in the works for that property.
I had seen, yeah, Ray, did you have something about the speed question?
Yeah, I have a comment regarding the stretch to Kuyama. That tends to be where people, if they've waited too long to switch to the left lane to make a left-hand turn onto El Roblar, that's where people speed to pass another car to get over to the left.
Okay.
So things speed up there.
Yeah.
I've done it myself while driving.
Right.
Oh, I got to make a left, and you got it.
Right.
Otherwise, you're stuck going straight or in that little right turn onto Kuyama.
Right.
One thing I noticed is that the speed limit isn't clearly posted. There's only one sign as soon as you turn right on that area, but it's not posted anywhere where you're kind of like, gee, this is a big wide road. I wonder what the speed limit is.
Right.
So when you turn right from Kuyama onto Maricopa?
No, when you turn right from like Highway 150 onto Highway 33 at the Bonds.
Okay.
It's like right there, but you're not looking at it then. I was actively looking for the speed limit signs. And so that's the only reason I saw it. I haven't seen it in years. And last I remember, it's 45 miles an hour there, like it used to be 30 years ago. So I do think that maybe speed limit signs would help, especially right when you start that area from Church to Kuyama.
Got it.
Russell also had a comment on that last block there.
Yeah, I agree with everybody that that's a lovely block. There's a couple of things about that block. One is that on the northbound side of the highway, it's pretty much for recreational walking only, because it really doesn't go from anywhere to anywhere on that side of the highway. On the opposite side, on the southbound side, one of the issues there is how do we get bicycles to the highway? And there are a number of places where that could happen, including at St. Thomas Drive, as you see on the map, and then the one that's just above the Ojai Meadows Preserve sign there. That path is actually being developed as an entry from the Conservancy, but you can see it's also possible to get connect that through the lower part of the Thomas Aquinas campus there. The issue of getting from across that preserve is one of the biggest concerns about creating a route from Miners Oaks into Maricopa Highway, and from there into Ojai. So that part there, allowing people to have two-way access across from Maricopa to South Lomita, is one of the biggest routing concerns that we have in terms of creating bicycles safe routes for the actual transportation needs of the community as opposed to the recreational needs.
Got it.
Isn't that where that bridge project to go against the ravine that's just past the elementary school, that then you go off Lomita straight across the preserve over to Maricopa
Yes,
High School?
yes, they're going to put a bridge in.
The Land Conservancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the concern that they have with that is that they do not want that to become a high traffic bicycle route, because the nature preserve itself
Yeah.
is there to protect the unique ecosystem. So that would open up a route, but in the long-term planning, having additional routes becomes very important. Otherwise, we will violate the preserve nature of the Meadows Preserve.
I wanted to come back to Eileen, because you hadn't sent us your scores before. Did you by any chance tally up your scores, and like which blocks were the most pleasant to you, and if you had any other thoughts in addition to what you've said so far?
I didn't actually tally them up. I did go through the exercise, and I guess what I was kind of stuck with was the actual day and time that you went there. And I've done this route so many times, I couldn't quite decide which day and time to use. So that area between Church Road and Cuyama, I think, even though cars do tend to go faster than they need to, there's clear sidewalks, it's very wide, and it's very open, so there's a lot of visibility. When you get over in front of Ben Franklin's, that's probably the worst because there's no sidewalk.
Right.
You have to go through the parking lot, and even the road narrows. There's a lot going on there. There's, bushes and cars and people and entrances and that type of thing. So that was probably the least comfortable and safe area. And then in the Vaughn's area isn't too bad because it has a pretty nice sidewalk. And even like in front of Ben Franklin's, like just the way the road is made, that's not a good bicycling or walking area.
Yeah.
Totally.
The other side of the road isn't bad at all, though.
Yeah.
The north side isn't a bad ride at all, or walk.
Right. This side right here is brutal, where there's
that right there is
sidewalk.
the worst spot.
Yeah. Yeah, and here also you don't have the median with the flowers, and it's just a lot of pavement, and there is a curb cut here, but it just doesn't feel super welcoming. I go back to the street trees as being one of the reasons why this area is so pleasant, is because there is so much shade here, and you've got it even all the way across the street in some locations. That's how tall those trees are.
So
I guess that area is so industrial. I mean, that is the major area for, the doctor's office, the hospital, the Vaughn's, the banks, the hardware store. There's a lot going on right there. And I don't know that every single area in Ojai needs to be beautiful. I mean, I think the visibility and access is really important versus making it more confusing. Like the crosswalks in front of Nordhoff are, one of the reasons they're kind of dicey is because of the shadowing and the sun in your face. So it's very difficult at numerous times of the day to pick up people in those sidewalks. And part of that is because of the trees.
Really?
So I mean, having ridden and walked this area, I'm very, very familiar with it. And those crosswalks in front of Nordhoff are way more difficult to pick up pedestrians and bicycles or anything than they are in front of Bunn's and Ben Franklin's, those two crosswalks like at the liquor store. See how the tree shades over? Like you don't really notice as much when people are stepping off the curb.
Right.
May I comment?
Yeah, go for
Please
it.
do.
Yeah, Doug Parker. I live on Church Road in the Hitching Post condominiums. I walk from Church and Maricopa in either direction several times a week. And I also drive from Church Maricopa up to Vons and into Ojai several times a week. I turned in 2 surveys. I had done 4, but I only got 2 of them turned in. I gave all blocks a high score. I found them all comfortable and satisfactory. Could they be made more beautiful? No doubt. But in the time of fiscal pressures resulting from COVID-19, I have very serious reservations as to this as an application of government and taxpayer resources. Setting that aside, if one wanted to have a bike path, and I'm not certain as to how much demand there is for a bike path, but if there is a demand for a bike path, I would consider as an alternate and less expensive proposition a route going from Del Norte to Cayama down to Maricopa, and if you want a route to the high school, then down Church Road, which is wide enough to accommodate a bike lane, and that would be both simpler and less expensive than the project as I understand it. But I'm deeply skeptical whether any project is justified given competing demands for financial resources.
Dana, do you see Kathy Nolan's hand and my hand? Kathy Nolan first.
I do. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about the trees. And I heard what Eileen was saying about that stretch from Church to Kuyama because of the tree shadows. It might be harder to see somebody crossing. Well, we do have the flashing beacons there, but I'm also wondering if the speed was identified and it was slower, people would be more apt to see someone. But the other comment I wanted to make was I went yesterday and was actually, I don't know, 90 something here in Ojai. It was pretty hot. Mm-hmm. And you significantly could feel the difference walking the stretch under those ukes in front of Nordhoff and towards the meadow as compared to in front of the retail area where they're kind of starting at, what is that, Valley Rio, or even right before that, all the way to Ojai Avenue, especially on the south side, the heat difference. So personally, I'm less likely to go walking somewhere if I'm going to be cooking out in the hot sun, which a good portion of the year, and then of course with climate change, we're having more hotter days. So I think that's just something else to throw into the mix. And I also wanted to say that, because we are a small community, and as far as retail and shopping and us supporting our local stores and what have you, I don't think adding street trees in front of, as street trees in the retail areas is going to be an impact on the volume of people going to those stores. I think it would be an enhancement.
Totally.
That's just my opinion. But I'm still going to go to the bank. I'm still going to go to Ben Franklin's when I need to, et cetera, street tree or not.
Totally. Souza, go for it.
So I went yesterday at 7 o'clock, and I've actually walked, and like Eileen, I've driven, bicycled, and walked that stretch almost every single day for the last 68 years. And that's not an exaggeration, because I came here when I was 7. Maybe I am exaggerating, 60 years, something like that. So, but what we have to remember, I went at 7 so that I could see the commuter traffic. And even without the school in session, there was quite a bit of traffic and trucks making deliveries, so I could see that. And what we have to remember is that the experience of walking is very different if you're just by yourself. But if you're a mother with a stroller and a little child on a scooter, baby in the buggy and a dog, and maybe a couple of other kids, you know, friends of the child, that is a very difficult area to negotiate. Once you get around Nordhoff and then Ben Franklin, as Eileen pointed out, Ben Franklin is absolutely the worst stretch. And it's difficult for parents with kids to get to that area, from that area through the intersection into the Y. That's all problematic. But what I did, by doing the checklist, I thought this was fabulous, because even though I've walked and bicycled and driven it so many times, the checklist opened my eyes to the potential that's there. Because there's so many people that would rather walk or bicycle to their doctor appointments, or to there's a pharmacy, and there's parents, there's a preschool, there's a church. There's so much potential pedestrian activity that is not currently taking place because there's no benches, no trees, no bike lanes. All of that is missing. It's basically a corridor for cars. It's basically what it is, with huge parking lots on both sides. The exception being the nicely landscaped area around Pyrie. That was a pleasure to walk. So that's my perspective. I really appreciate this checklist. It opened my eyes to the potential.
Nice. Yeah, that was definitely part of the intention. I have a question just for whoever wants to respond. So we asked in that second worksheet, you know, you scored whatever the question was, your response to the score, and then we also asked you what you think, you know, could improve your score. I mean, does anyone have any thoughts on if there were to be a bike lane, which is, you know, the planned design curbside, would that make you feel safer walking, since the bike lane plus the buffer plus the parking is kind of also another layer of protection for pedestrians as well? Just kind of curious to hear if anyone has any thoughts on that, considering what's planned.
This is Dennis. I guess I didn't feel at all at risk walking up and down. I mean, the street itself is quite wide, and if you put in a simple bike lane with maybe some paint and posts or something, you know, that would make it maybe a little better. But I don't think you need to knock out a lane each way. So I'm with Mr. Parker. I think I would do something, if you want to enhance it, I would do something that's less expensive and more modest.
We have some comments, but I saw that Kathy had her hand up.
Yeah, I did.
Go for it, Kathy.
So yeah, what I noticed, you know, as a pedestrian, and if I just started down by the Y and worked my way up, the problem that I see at the corner, and that would be that Weinberg Memorial Garden. And I've actually witnessed this also. I've seen somebody get off the bus in a wheelchair and try to cross from the Vaughan side over to the other side to catch the bus that's going the opposite direction, and barely being able to get across, so that the signals aren't actually synchronized to work with pedestrians, number one. Number two, the ADA ramps are not at this point, and I have a feeling they haven't been done yet because this project's coming up, but they don't have the appropriate new ramps with the, I can't think of the name of it, but there's the grid plate that they put in for ADA accessibility. And then also the sidewalk varies in width. So if there's more than one person, if you're trying to walk side by side, or if you're in a wheelchair, or if you, as Susan mentioned, if you're a mom with a dog and kids, it's a little more challenging. As a single person, yes, you know, other than that Ben Franklin's area, you can maneuver. But even at the Weinberg Memorial, the sidewalk is very narrow there, and I've watched, not right now, but in the past, high school students having to go single file, and it's not consistent. Then there's some maintenance issues with just plants hanging over in the sidewalk in a couple areas. And then also the pavement treatment, I know, I think this is more in the Vaughn's area. It's concrete, then there's some, it's kind of rough, and then it's asphalt. In a couple places, the trees are raising the sidewalk down by Nordoff. So I think all those can be changed, but I do think putting side amenities, which would be benches, even trash cans, something like that would be beneficial. And I do feel that a buffer, if there was parking, which we always in the city of Ojai, people are complaining we don't have enough parking, so you could add parking, and the bike lanes could provide an additional buffer for pedestrians for safety.
I definitely agree with Sousa that if you're, doing the whole stroller and the dog and everything, the sidewalks, and what Kathy said about the that Weinberg Park area, it's very rough and very irregular, but I haven't seen in the project that the actual sidewalks are going to be fixed. Like there's a lot of posts right in the middle of the sidewalk, and the fire hydrant that you have to negotiate around, and there's some utility box and everything. But I haven't seen how those things are going to get fixed with this.
Yeah, the demonstration project is not moving any concrete or anything like that, so there's no sidewalk widening or anything included in the demonstration project. But I think this is still really productive conversation, because I know Greg is on the line as well. So yeah, I guess that's, just something to keep in mind. We can only really work within the existing right of way and with the existing striping as much as we can, since it all has to be removed.
Can you hear my voice?
Yeah, John.
Yeah, to everybody who's participating, it's really important that people kind of get the concept here that the beautification, the protected bike lanes, this is all being put in place to invite people to participate and use this area in something other than their car. Now, what Sousa spoke to was really important, because my wife will not ride on the street of Maricopa. She will ride on the sidewalk, and she always feels really bad because she has to deal with pedestrians. And so it's really important for people to understand that the money is allocated for this only because it's an active transportation program project that gets funds only for alternate forms of transportation. And so when people talk about the funds could be utilized differently, this grant is specifically put in place and used for these types of measures to change the condition of these areas to be more safe for people to ride their bike and to walk. So this isn't about making it easier for people to drive. We've already organized and designed our entire world around cars. This is an alternate focus. Thank you.
This is Dennis. One thing I'd like to add, comment came up about parking. One thing I realized as I was walking this is that there is a fair amount of off-street parking at the stores. And really the question is whether you need any more on-street parking given what's there. I mean, the only place where I've seen parking be an issue is right along the preserve, particularly once they limited some of the parking right at the preserve. But every other location, whether it's the Vaughn's or the Ben Franklin lot or the hospital or any of the pharmacy or Quest, any of those places have plenty of off-street parking. So you really, I don't think you need any more on-street parking in that area. So.
Yeah, I think maybe, I guess, Greg, if you want to speak a little bit to that, I think, you know, the parking is an additional kind of layer of protection for the bike lane. And then I think maybe the addition of parking to the permanent design was in anticipation of, you know, because like we said, that parcel there that's across from the Meadows Preserve is eventually going to get developed. So you know, I think it was maybe a little bit more forward thinking.
Yeah,
Was the
I'd like to step in there. This Greg, and yeah, I think it is recognized because it's such a wide roadway that to provide that safer bike lane, they call it the class 4 when you have some kind of a physical buffer or between the bike lane and the travel lane will remain. That there's occasional demand for parking. It's really very rare. There's even signage in general that out there that doesn't allow parking, but I think we all know for 4th of July parade, a little bit around the Meadows, like you're saying, graduation, there's little spikes in demand that occur. So this is one way just to address those spikes in demand that do occur. At the same time, we create that buffer between the bike lane and the car lane.
I think I'll also add to that, we did recognize that when we were doing the demonstration project design, because when we visited, you know, and walked and drove along the corridor, there wasn't a lot of parking even by the Meadows Preserve. And then to your point, Dennis, we did notice that there was already a lot of surface parking. So that's why, you know, we are also utilizing barriers between the parking lane and the bike lane buffer, which weren't originally proposed for the permanent project, but we have them in the demonstration project to test, just to test out how that works. Because the idea there is that because the parking might not be full 100% of the time, providing that extra protection for the bike lane, we thought that an additional kind of layer using some physical barriers, whether it is posts or some lower profile ones that we're seeking to get approved by Caltrans, that would keep the bike lane protected basically all the time, you know, physically protected without having to rely on the parking spaces being full, because they probably won't be a lot. But yeah, Susan.
Oh, just real quick. What I saw yesterday morning is very typical. I saw a grandfather with 4 or 5 young boys on the sidewalk, riding in the wrong direction. And that's very typical on that stretch, is that all the kids, or even if the parents are on the highway, the kids will be on the sidewalk. And I don't think the kids will ever feel safe without that buffer. So I'm still thinking in that direction. So that, and yeah, I know Tiffany Morse has said, we've met with her, the superintendent of schools, she cannot promote this unless the bike lanes are protected. So the whole point is for the kids to feel safe, because adults like me and Eileen, you know, we've ridden our bikes all the time, and it's not a problem for me, the highway. But I know that it's a problem with children, and especially, you know, the younger ones, and they like to ride in groups. So this will make it safe for not just one child to be riding, but for all their friends to be riding together.
May I interject?
Cool. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, you know, Susan's touching upon an important point there, and there's some concerns that people have about this without having the full picture that this is active transportation, and meaning primarily bicycles. People can walk for transportation in this town, but being so spread out makes it a very limited transportation option. So the bicycles become the real potential for shifting transportation away from vehicles into some other form. The funding for this comes from money that has been created through greenhouse gas reduction sources. And that's the specific aim of this. And within Ojai, people do not ride bicycles for one simple reason. The routes in Ojai all include very dangerous locations that are potentially lethal for people, especially for young people without the experience they need to ride bicycles. So solving those hazards on the highways is the key to making the city into a place that people can ride bicycles safely. If they can ride bicycles safely, they will be more inclined to ride bicycles.
Mhm.
So the question of the current demand is not the issue. The question is the current limits to using bicycles, and that's what this grant is designed to do, is to find ways to eliminate those limits so that people will be encouraged to ride bicycles and get away from being dependent upon fossil fuel burning vehicles. Thank you.
Dana, these gentlemen have been trying to, they raise their
Oh.
hands. Edward and Dennis.
Edward and Dennis. Yeah. Wait, let me see if I think that you can unmute yourselves. If you want to. Oh, okay, go for it.
I walk the sidewalks all the time with kids and everything on their bikes, and also I think if you take out a lane in each direction, I think it's going to cause a big traffic jam. And I think I go with Dennis, making a narrower bike lane with some kind of barricade, but not taking any lanes away, because in the morning when the school's in, and in the afternoon when they're out, you cannot get across Maricopa Highway. You'll have to make right turns and go alternate routes. So I think it causes more bottlenecks, more problem.
Yeah, and I think we've heard that same comment about the bike lane come up a few times. And I guess the only real thing we can say at this point is that we should all be happy that, you know, we're doing a demonstration of what is currently designed, which is that wider bike lane with the buffer, so that if it is going to cause congestion, that we're aware of that before the city implements the permanent design.
Right.
So I think that's something that we'll all be keeping, obviously, an eye out for. I mean, that's part of our evaluation plan. That's part of the 6-month demonstration project. And potentially, if, you know, we'll see what happens, and they will be incorporating that into the final design if anything about the bike lane.
I just thought of another problem.
Yeah.
The bike lanes on, if they're going up towards El Roblar from the Y, if they don't stop at the Carrillo, Valerio, and all the cross streets and just go right through, people are going to hit them. Because if they're going the wrong way, like kids, they always ride the wrong way. They never follow the traffic pattern they're supposed to. And if people don't see them, if they're looking one way and they look back and they go, they're going to hit somebody. I've seen it almost happen. So
yeah,
I don't know how it's going to work.
Well, there's definitely going to be signage on the pavement that indicates the direction of travel, and we're not going to have people on the sidewalk anymore. So there's going to be more clear zone for people in the bike lane to follow the flow of traffic. And also there's going to be more visibility at the intersections. People are going to be aware of people in the bike lanes.
I think we can also, we'll try to mitigate that with signage as well. So there will be additional signage, you know, that motorists can see. It'll be that size according to all of the specifications and everything. Not only labeling the bike lane, but if they're, you know, at any conflict zones where the bike lane might cross the driveway. So we can also kind of help mitigate some of that with signage, but hopefully with some of the design of the intersections, like the curb extensions, for example, which kind of function by design to slow the turning of cars. You know, that would be the intention there, is that cars would have to take those turns off of Maricopa Highway onto some of those side streets at a slower pace, which would ideally, you know, increase the visibility or the likelihood that they'd see a crossing bike. But yeah, it's definitely something to look out for.
Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Yep.
So part of this thing that is, you know, in process right now, Edward and Dennis, is that currently what you experience is virtually no one riding bikes and walking. This is to encourage much more people to do it, and as more people do it, the cars and the other people walking and biking, you start to get used to the flow of things, and you start to create a situation where people are more aware of what bicycles are doing and how they would operate in this environment safely. And so that's what this is encouraging, is that there's more protections put in, but it's also an experience that everyone begins to get used to. That's a really important part of this experience.
Hello.
Russell, Russell, I think this is a good time for you to talk about, within this demonstration project, the idea that you had to allow cars to go around at the Pyrie area, and to talk about how that might get implemented while Greg Grant is involved, and that gets discussed
Yeah,
as an alternate solution.
Thank you, John. I was just thinking about that. What John's getting at is the issue that Edward is concerned about, and Dennis are concerned about, where the school traffic tends to back up and block the main through lane on the highway. And that's an issue that we're looking at from a number of different perspectives. And the lowest cost, simplest solution is to limit, is to use the principles of a road diet effectively. And in order for a road diet to work, meaning taking 2 lanes down to 1, you have to have turn pockets that accommodate the turning vehicles, so that the turning vehicles do not block the main lane. So the length of the turn pockets becomes the issue. And getting that right on the southbound traffic would mean not having parking for a long enough distance that the vehicles can pull into that area and make the right turn. And the ones approaching northbound that would have to turn left into campus, that area there would be difficult to have an adequately long turn pocket, and might be a suitable place to limit the parking and to not block the parking lane with any obstacles like planters, so that the vehicles could go around any vehicles that do block the main through lane very easily. Could be done 24/7, could be done just during load-in and pickup times. But nonetheless, if you just don't obstruct the what is currently the inside lane between Pyrie and Church, then the issue of the lane backing up as they turn left onto campus goes away. So I think all of those concerns that are being raised could be handled easily and effectively, and should be handled effectively, because I agree that they are real concerns.
Do you get that, Anthony? You get that, Anthony? That what he's saying there?
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really good point. And in our next meeting, our next CAC meeting, we're going to dive deeper into the site plan and the materials. So that'll be the best time. And I think between now and then, we can do some sketches and just make sure that we understand the concept, and then see if we can get that in the actual proposal, because I think that might actually be a really good idea. And maybe what we do is, and we've already floated this to Caltrans, is have a plan B for certain key locations where we think something might happen, to try to create a mitigation plan. Mm-hmm. The whole point of this project is to try to see what the design is right now, how it functions, and to address anything that happens as a result of that functioning. So it might be that we can create a mitigation plan that if there are backups or other traffic problems, that we can address them during the demonstration project as a way of continuing to fine tune the design. So I really like that idea, and I think we should think about that.
Hey, Greg, this is Dennis. When is it that the city council will end up voting on this? Don't we, with the pushing back of the demonstration project, don't we have a relatively short test period before the city council votes?
I guess to go back, the proposals start in July, have the demonstration continue through December, and ideally, right, school will be back in session. We can get a good feel for how school operates, because we really are talking about 10, 15 minutes in the morning and afternoon when school starts and finishes, where there can be potential congestion And I say potential because we've monitored that for weeks at a time. And the issue, for instance, Russell was mentioning where that left-hand turn lane can back up if there's a timid driver turning left that creates congestion in that lane. It can happen, but it's been extremely brief and unusual. It's not common. And,
but Greg, I think, no, my question was, when is it that the city council votes on this?
Right, and it's been really a progression of votes. I mean, it's been supported for years now, the whole project. I think, as you know, this demonstration was requested and we've got it going. So the progression of votes has been the approval of the grants, the approval of the demonstration project, the approval to proceed with the design effort. So all that stuff is underway and supported by the council. So there's not an expectation that they're going to say yes or no. There's an expectation that the demonstration project may be a factor to consider in that part of the design, right? Because this isn't, the ATP project isn't just Maricopa, it's really Maricopa Highway as well as from the Y all the way out to Gridley. There's a lot of other facets of the project. So the Maricopa Highway, we're hopefully going to live and learn from this demonstration project to fine tune or modify. I mean, worst case, and I think I hear, the Maricopa opposition group that is really opposed to the lane reduction. So that is a possibility. The council will say, hey, the demonstration did not go well and we don't support the lane reduction. But at this point,
but Greg, just think about it. Tony was just saying, or Anthony, sorry, was just saying that we were going to take what we learned from the project. But I guess I'm concerned that there isn't much time before the vote that is scheduled for November, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. I'm not sure about, that vote you're talking about. We're living and learning from the demonstration project to tune it. I mean, the extreme tune would be leave 4 lanes and put bike lanes on the side. That's the extreme tune-up. The other tune-up is to provide other provisions like Russell mentioned, where you could have a slip lane at the left-hand turn lane at Church. There's options for those kind of things. So, but in the end, the council will approve, presumably, construction sometime next summer, and that construction may, until that construction is approved, I mean, that would be the plan, the final plan that's approved for construction. Mm-hmm. And even keep in mind, I mean, we modify projects during construction. That's not ideal. It can cost more money. It doesn't always, but we preferably will get a complete lockdown design before we go to construction. There wouldn't be a modification. So until we start construction, things can be modified.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I thought there was a 65% of the plan approval vote in November. That's what I heard at the last CAC, I thought.
The 60% design is a draft version now that we're looking at, and we plan to review that with council in June next month.
June, so even before the demonstration project starts.
Right. I mean, that has to do with, it's an extensive permitting process. Keep in mind, this is not city's highway, it's a Caltrans right of way. So we have to go through Caltrans approvals. So we're working out the bugs on the entire project. It's not just Maricopa, to work out things like curb extensions in the downtown area and so on. That we have a truck management plan. We're analyzing truck traffic and where it goes and what size trucks and so on need for certain turns. So that's all part of the extensive permitting process underway. So you can imagine that we get 65, 90% up in November, December, and then all part of the project is this lane reduction. We go back and say, all right, based on the demonstration, we'd like to modify this. We'd modify that part of the design, which is ideal, right? It's on paper and we can modify the design. Of course, a lot easier than we can move concrete in the field.
Mm-hmm. So guys, for the sake of time, since we're already at an hour, I just wanted to go over, so we have another piece of homework for you guys. It's not nearly as time consuming as a corridor analysis, but I'm just gonna share my screen really fast. I will be sending this out following the meeting, but so this is something that we do, this worksheet for all of our projects. And it's basically just to start getting an idea kind of how much you all actually want to be involved in the implementation and just what you could contribute. So some of you might have like an extra, tape measures, chalk lines, those types of things that you could bring out for us. But then if you're also, I know that Ray is a photographer. If you just strictly want to help with recruiting volunteers or continuing to help getting the word out, that's great too. So this is just something that I'm going to be sending as a follow-up to this meeting that we would love for you to fill out. And then a couple other just kind of housekeeping things. The second public Q&A is next Wednesday at 5 p.m. I believe you all have been, except for maybe Edward and Dennis, I'll make sure to get your contact information from Zoom. But I've been sending emails about the upcoming engagements, and we have the public Q&A next Wednesday evening, and we're going to be going through the site plan then. So it's a little bit less of an interactive format. Obviously, we take Q&A and all of that, but if you want to participate in that, you're more than welcome. It's the same situation. You'll have to register so that we can keep track of participants. And then the third item is that we've created a survey, a pre-implementation survey is what we're calling it. So that is something that we are going to use to get feedback now, and then we distribute kind of the mirror version of that survey when or after the project has been implemented to see, how people, respond to the demonstration project. If, their answers before about how they feel about the corridor, et cetera, kind of change, and that's on the webpage. If you guys want to take that just to kind of get us jump started, but I will follow up with all of that in an email so you have all of the information. But yeah, that was all I had. Do we have anything else, Tony?
We have a bunch of items that are going to be on the website. The draft plans are going to be on the website. They are changing because of comments that we're getting from Caltrans, but you can all feel free to start looking at those. Our next major Q&A session with the broader community outside of the venue of this smaller discussion. At that meeting, we'll go through the plans block by block. Yeah, that's next week, right? And then talk about the materials and just how we intend to do the actual physical work. So that's coming soon. And yeah, so I think if there's any other questions, feel free to email us. And if there's anybody who you feel like should be in this group and who would be a great contribution to the CAC, let us know. We'd love to have them here and, continue the conversation.
Tony or Dana, would one of you send around to the group the web address for the resource you mentioned?
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I will send it all.
Thank you.
I am hopeful that I think I have everybody's contact information already on here, except for Edward and Dennis, unless you guys were not at the previous CAC meeting, right?
No.
The two of you? Okay. I guess I'm gonna send you in the chat, if you can see that, my email. And we're still kind of working with Zoom, so I'm hoping that Zoom keeps track of contact information, but if you wouldn't mind just typing in one of your guys' email addresses so that I can have your contact information. Do you know how to do you see the chat feature there?
Not sure.
Yeah, see the yellow right there, the orange?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you should see that I sent you my email, and if you can just type your email back to me in that chat box, one of your guys'.
We're all still figuring this out.
It'll only come to me, so that's okay.
Yeah.
So Dana and Tony, I wanted to say, so given that the country is kind of opening up in small ways in some areas and bigger in others, what's the feedback that you guys would give us on the actual date that this might get implemented on the demonstration project day, that it would actually be a kickoff?
Tentatively at the end of July, and we're still on the fence about the kickoff. My gut says that we do an informal bike ride, but not do any sort of like major kickoff event the way that we had envisioned previously. But the end of July, that's what we're thinking about, the last week of July. and we'll have more clarity on that hopefully by the first or second week of June.
Great, thank you.
We have to have clarity on that by the second week of June. So.
Yeah.
Cool, guys.
Well, yeah, that's it.
That's
I'll follow up with you guys. I'll stay on if they are able to send me the email. But I think we're wrapped up. That was really productive conversation. We appreciate everyone doing the surveys and just kind of giving your thoughts, because even if, you know, even if there's stuff that like the sidewalks and that sort of thing that we're not able to address in the demonstration, it's still, that's why we did this, because it's also good to inform the permanent project and just facilitate conversation with, you know, the city president as well. So.
And I just want to make sure that everyone knows that the sidewalks are going to be fixed outside of this demonstration project. That's part of the 18.
Right.
Yeah, there's going to be a sidewalk in front of Ben Franklin, and anywhere else where something's too narrow, that's going to be addressed. Yeah.
Right. Just not with our 6 month. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.